The Odyssey has brought us to Buenos Aires, Argentina, and while we're here, we're going to do something really cool. One of our most favorite movies and musicals is the story of Evita. So we're going to follow in the footsteps of Eva Perón herself, and there's no better place to start than the museum that's dedicated to Evita.
Yes, and that's where we are right now with it behind us, as you can hopefully see. This is actually a home that Eva used for some of her social programs. This is one she bought through her foundation, and actually it supported women that were in need of services until they got back on their feet. So she bought this very, very beautiful home, and she said they deserve to be in something like this. So it's now turned into a museum that goes all the way through her life, from her early childhood all the way through her glory and ultimately through her death. So it's a wonderful place to be.
If you really want to follow in the footsteps of Evita, one of the places you have to come to is Plaza Evita. It's this little green space in Buenos Aires. It's a statue of Evita. She's barefoot, striding forward. It's surrounded by a fence here, but you can clearly see her standing tall. A lot of people don't know, but this is built on the former grounds of the presidential palace. It was destroyed by a different administration years after it was built, but it's here to remind us that Evita used to be here. Behind me is Luna Park. It's an events venue. It was here in 1944 that Evita first met Juan Perón. It was during a charity event raising money for the victims of the San Juan earthquake. They left that night as a couple. When you think about the wealthy and the elite of Buenos Aires, you often think about them coming here to the Teatro Colon. The Teatro Colon is the grand opera house of the city. So it would be fun to imagine that Eva Perón would have come here frequently, looking stunning in her grand ball gowns, but there actually is a lot of doubt that she ever came here at all. Her schedule would have been so busy, there would have been a lot of security concerns, and she wanted to portray herself as one of the common folks. So it's unlikely she would have come here, but it's fun to imagine that she did.
We're visiting Plaza de Mayo right now, and it's the most famous and the oldest plaza in Buenos Aires. It's got all these beautiful, significant buildings around it, and it dates back to really the beginning of Argentina. So many important things happen here, and what people don't know is many years ago they actually used to have bullfights here, not anymore.
Behind me is the Casa Rosada. It is the executive office of the President of Argentina. It also plays a pivotal role in what we remember about Evita herself. Everyone remembers the memorable time that she addressed the people of Argentina from that very balcony. What you see behind me is the Cabildo of Buenos Aires. A cabildo is the former seat of power when the country was under Spanish rule. That is no longer the case. A significant moment in history occurred here for the country when thousands of Argentines came here and opened up their umbrellas to protest the Spanish rule and the desire to secede from Spain. This occurred again many years later in 1951 when thousands of Argentines came here, opened their umbrellas again, but this time in support of Eva Perón in the hopes that she would accept the vice presidency of the country. She ultimately did not, but it was a significant time in history for the people of this country. The massive building you see behind me is the Congress of the country of Argentina. It's where all significant legislation takes place. It was built in 1906. Evita herself used to visit it often in support of legislation that was important to her, especially around the women's right to vote. Shortly after her death in 1952, her body was laid in state here for quite some time, and thousands upon thousands of people throughout Argentina came to say their last goodbyes.
So when you're following the footsteps of Eva Perón, they end here, and that's here at Recoleta Cemetery right behind me. This is actually where she is buried, her final resting place, which is of course, huge tourist attraction here. But it's also a beautiful place to come. So you don't come here just for her grave, but there's amazing statuary and funerary and all kinds of wonderful things to see and explore here. The other thing that's interesting about this story, and it's a little bit sad, is that for a while her body was actually taken by her political opponents who were concerned that even in death that she would have too much influence. It was absolutely ultimately recovered, and she's now resting here.
We have just exited the Recoleta Cemetery, and it was a wonderful visit. And we have learned so much about the life and the death of Eva Perón, both here in the cemetery and throughout our stay in Buenos Aires.
It really is such an interesting story. And of course, you know, you can look at the history, or you can go to the movies and see kind of how it's dramatically played. But let me tell you, it's a complicated story, and it's even more complicated than the movies are. But it's such an intriguing kind of unintended story that is just really interesting to us. So we definitely recommend you come to the Recoleta Cemetery. We definitely recommend you learn about Eva and all her life. And we absolutely recommend that you come to Buenos Aires. This is a wonderful place to visit.